looking at me saying, oh, you've recovered, you're traveling, you're doing this, you're doing that. I don't think there is one point that you get to where you're like, I'm done. I'm at a point that, yeah, I'm complete. With recovery, there's always more you can be doing to improve and make tweaks, and it's not coming from a place of not being good enough, but it's coming from a place of how can I improve my life even more? How can I keep expanding and keep growing? And I think that's pretty limitless. Thank you for tuning in to the Calm Your Nervous System podcast, where you will learn to regulate your nervous system, not just calm it. I'm your host, Jenny Adams, and I'm a somatic coach who has recovered from debilitating ME and trauma. Alongside my guest experts, I'm here to share tips, stories, and debunk jargon, what is somatics anyway, about how you can regulate your nervous system so you don't have to live with chronic illness, burnout, or debilitating trauma for the rest of your life. A joyful life is possible. Hi everyone, in this week's episode it's just going to be me, and I'm going to be talking to you about, giving you a little bit of an update. I have been through something quite stressful the last couple of months, so I thought it might be helpful for you guys to hear a few of the tools that helped me along those stressful few months. What helped me, what might help you, so you don't end up burning out or having another flare up. So let's get started. So the last few months, it's September now when I record this, and in June I went to Ireland and I was talking to a friend out there, and she was telling me about how she's going to pack up her life and move to South Africa. And she said, oh, we're going to Airbnb our house out because it's easier than renting it. So I came home, and this felt like a little bit of a universal nudge. Mentioned this to my partner because we've been trying to sell our house for nearly a year. And spoke to my partner, and a few days later he just said, why don't we Airbnb our house out? Because we're in a seaside village, or seaside resort. The beach is the end of our road. We are basically knocking around in this house. For a little bit of context, we bought this house in the pandemic when I thought I wanted to be a full-time Pilates teacher. I've been there, I've done that now, and yeah, it wasn't my journey. It was a chapter in a book, but it wasn't my whole book. So we bought the house with an extra bedroom and a big garage that I turned into studios, and we just don't need them anymore. So we have, if you're watching on YouTube, you might see we're in my wonderful dressing room right now. So I no longer have an office. I am working off of a dressing table. So we have blitzed through the house over the last few months, and for us to be able to do this, it wasn't just a case of, getting some fancy bedding. That was one part of it. But we've had to convert we had a garage conversion, which was my studio. We've turned that into a livable annex, which has meant we've put a bathroom in there. We've had to get a plasterer in. We've had to get an electrician. My partner's a plumber, so that's handy. He has done the plumbing. But we've had to fit a bathroom. We've had to measure it all up, get a kitchen. So we went down to Cornwall in July and hired a van and picked up basically a whole kitchen. So we've had some fun doing this, but a lot of planning because it's a double garage. So it's not huge. It's like a granny annex sort of thing. So yeah, we've had this big project going on, and to get to where we are now, we've basically had to get all of our belongings from a 5-bedroom house, and I am a bit of a hoarder, and downsize. So you might see I've got some clothes behind me in my wardrobe. There's not much there. We have had a huge sort out. And it can be quite therapeutic, actually, to go through having a big sort out and just getting rid of stuff that you don't need anymore, because it lets fresh stuff in then, fresh energy. So we've been going through room by room and clearing stuff out, reorganising things, selling stuff, buying stuff. And it's been one of those projects that could be, and has been, pretty bloody stressful. To turn a 5-bed house, every single bedroom needs its own plan. So we've had to get rid of things in every bedroom. We've had to, plan what do we need in that room? How big does that space need to be? Can we fit this in? What kind of bed do we get? What mattresses do we get? Where do we buy them from? Etc, etc. So there's been a lot going on whilst getting a load of stuff out of the rooms and organising, on Facebook Marketplace, people buying and selling things. And yeah, it's been a lot. And I've also been working was working in a second job and running my business. So we had this nudge, this universal nudge that my friend Shona gave me. So thanks, Shona, if you're listening, for this little nudge to go and run this Airbnb. And about 2 weeks afterwards, I was sitting at my desk trying to do my job, not my business, but a job. So I had been working for a charity 2 days a week, supporting people with pain management and well-being. And it was one of these jobs that, it was the perfect role for me. I realised, being the ADHDer and entrepreneur that I am, I just can't work for someone else. So that had to go. And that was one of those universal sort of nudges that I realised I can't be working in this other job, running my business and an Airbnb project and, looking after myself. Something had to give. And me looking after myself is not negotiable anymore. That has to come top of the pile. And then the other things come underneath that. And I realised I was just feeling a bit stifled in this job, that I wasn't able to help people in the way that they most needed, just pointing people to support rather than actually helping get to the root cause of things. Just really, I was struggling because I could see it wasn't really getting people anywhere. It was giving them a little bit of support, but nothing long term. So I quit the job, which again was a big leap of faith to do. And immediately, I've got some time back. I've got some energy back. I've got some headspace back. It was good. It was a good decision. So what actually helped get through these few stressful months, that if we did this a few years ago, well, we probably wouldn't have been able to do it. Me and my partner would have been arguing about things. We'd have just been very dysregulated. And when you've got one dysregulated nervous system talking to another dysregulated nervous system, nothing good happens. You just get more dysregulation. So if you ever notice, if you're having an argument with someone and you really want to get your point across and they really want to get their point across, no one's actually listening. You're just shouting at each other and no one's hearing anything. So we communicate well enough now that if there are any disagreements, we kind of take ourselves out of the situation, look after ourselves individually, and then we come back to this and say, actually, this thing was the issue, or that really upset me. Can we talk about this? So we actually listen to each other. So what actually helped get through this stressful period? One of the biggest things was asking for and accepting help, which again, a few years ago, I'd have been like, we don't need any help, we'll be fine. We did. We have quite a big house, we have a big garden, and we just did not know where to start. So ADHD, executive functioning issues here with organisation and prioritisation, all of this, is not easy when you're doing a big project. But I have been giving myself permission to kind of ADHD this whole thing. So rather than having like a methodical process, when I get the urge to do something, so I might have my dinner, and instead of watching the TV after dinner for an hour, like I do sometimes, if I've got energy, I'm going to go to a room and just say, oh, what am I being drawn to in this room? And then I'll give myself half an hour to an hour, or until I get fed up, doing stuff in that room. So I might coming into my dressing room, which was absolutely chock-a-block full of clothes. I it was just too much to do all in one go. So I would say, okay, I'm going to do this one wardrobe. I'm just going to do the hanging clothes. And then once I've done that, I'm going to stop. Rather than trying to do like the whole room. And I've spoken to clients about this as well, how we will look at things in like this huge project and all this stuff needs to happen. And then we don't actually get started because it's too big. Whereas when we can chunk it down into smaller segments, often the reason we want to get the thing done is because when we get the thing done, we think we're going to feel a certain way. It's not always the case. We can find that feeling without doing the thing. So that's one thing, is honouring, okay, well, when I've emptied my wardrobe, I'm going to feel relaxed. I would question that. Will you actually? Is that just a I'll be happy when syndrome? So you can find that level of relaxation within you at any time. And if you are working through, let's say, your dressing room, your wardrobe, instead of taking that entire room or entire wardrobe all in one go, when you break it down into smaller chunks and say, I'm just going to do a drawer or a box or this section, you can then also give yourself that little dopamine hit once you've done it to say, great, I finished the drawer. I've done that job. Yay, well done me. Check back in with yourself after you've given yourself that little celebration. And from there you say, do I want to do any more? Do I need to do any more right now? Is now a time to go and sit down and, watch 20 minutes of telly or go on your phone for a little bit or whatever, and then come back to it? Rather than trying to tackle the whole thing. And how many of you are like blitzers? Just will clean the house top to bottom or want to, and it just doesn't work. So breaking things down into smaller chunks definitely helped. And also asking for that help. So I was having a conversation with my mum and I was saying how helpful my partner, his dad, has been, because he will just say, I'm off on Tuesday, I'm coming over, what do you want me to do? And that was so helpful that he would just come over and the pair of them will be building something in the garden or he's painting in the annex next door. There was always something for him to do. We did not run out of things to give him to do. So yeah, just having that support was so helpful. And I was talking to my mum about this, and then the next day, mysteriously, her partner texts me and says, Jen, do you need any support? How are you getting on? And if you're looking at where I am right now, we've got this gorgeous gold wallpaper behind me in this dressing room. There was a wardrobe behind where I am right now. And I remember when we decorated this room when we first moved in, we had the conversation about, do we need to wallpaper behind the wardrobes? I had a feeling that we had, because there was enough wallpaper left, but obviously there wasn't. But we took the wardrobe out and went, oh shit, the wall's blank and it's covered in filler because there was a few cracks on the wall. So we filled over it and it was lilac. And if you can see where I am, it doesn't quite go with the decor. So for those of you who are listening, we've got, you won't see the ceiling anyway, a really dark blue ceiling, dark blue door, there's a dark blue chair behind me, and then I've got the gold wallpaper with dark blue, I think they're saber-toothed tigers. Yeah, I love a bit of a wacky interior, if you haven't already got that vibe from me. So we needed to get the wallpaper done. So that was a job that he did in this room first time around when we first moved in, my mum's husband. And I said, yeah, actually, could you come help do some wallpapering, please? And just writing down a couple of tasks that didn't need me or Nath to do was really helpful, because there were certain things like no one else can go through my drawers and sort out what clothes I want to keep and what clothes I want to sell on Vinted, what clothes I want to give to the charity shop, what clothes just need to go into some storage. I'm the only one that can do that. But when I was looking at, okay, what tasks do need doing that aren't specific to us, Nath is a plumber. Focus on the plumbing. Other people could help us with like putting blinds up or painting or like all of these other little tasks. So having help from family and asking for help as well was really, really helpful. I talked a little bit about me and Nath communicating, and that was very much like we were both working on this project. When we've got our minds to something, both of us, we are on it. But we can, and I would say I'm better at this than he is, but you know what I do. Being able to actually stop and have a rest because you're living in this project. It's kind of 24/7, and it can be very tempting to end up just going and going and going and going. So giving ourselves the permission to just stop and have a break. And I'd notice he would come to me and say, "Oh, sorry, Jen, I'm just really tired today. I'm not going to do anything." And we've got into a bit more of a habit now of not needing to apologise for needing a rest. But we've both been brought up in this similar society, similar family setup, that, going and going and going and achieving and getting stuff done is something to be praised for. So to stop doing something can still feel quite counterintuitive. And I don't know if you find the same, that actually stopping without feeling guilty or without having to apologise, to just stop, it can be hard. So we are getting better at communicating our needs and honouring each other, because some days, I'm nagging him to get something done and he just has to say, no, it's not going to get done until such and such a date, or I need a day off. And that's okay, because that's down to me to be able to hear that and for him to be able to set that boundary and say, actually, this is what I need. Can he speak to his needs and can I hear them? And another thing that's really been helpful doing this whole project is putting my needs first. So I am not responsible for his needs, he is, but I am responsible for my own. So during this period, I have been really, really busy. So I've got a launch coming up in my business. So that's been all hands on deck. And I was working this other job. We've got this Airbnb thing going on. So there's been a lot going on. And weirdly, this has actually been the time that I have been prioritising myself more than I normally would. So I think I know, when I've gone through stressful periods in life before, that my own self-care kind of gets pushed to the bottom of the list. And this was me, and this is me saying this with hindsight now, really honouring what I needed. So I started Pilates practice with someone new, someone local, which was something that I absolutely love doing for myself. And that was something, again, that I've carved out the time to go to these sessions. I had some one-to-ones with her, and that's been just really nice for my body to just drop into my body and not be in my head. What do I need to do? What's going on with the launch? Where's the Airbnb? Blah, blah, blah. So taking the time out of my schedule to go to Pilates once a week. I've also been working with a personal trainer for the last couple of weeks as well, finding time to see her. I've been doing movement on YouTube as well, so whenever I can find sort of 15 minutes, I'll put a video on and watch something on there and get moving a little bit. So I've also been really, really focused on what I'm eating. So I'm also aware I'm getting married in 6 months' time and just want to get healthier. I don't want to get skinny for my wedding. I want to get healthy and strong and fit for my marriage. So that's been something I've been aware of, because things have just slipped over the last few months. So really trying to get a bit healthier. And obviously that's kind of like a multi-pronged approach. I have been getting food delivered from a company called Thrive, and no, they don't sponsor me, unfortunately, but they have been delivering breakfast, lunch and dinner in like little cardboard containers. That comes twice a week. it's not the cheapest, it's like £100 a week, so it is a bit of an investment, but it's like all of my meals. And it's filling enough that I'm not snacking. And for those of you with ADHD, you will probably know if you are busy and your mind is doing all sorts of other things, food can often be one of the hardest things to actually organise, because you've spent the whole day working, your brain's just done, and your body's going, I'm hungry. You get out to the kitchen and you're like, oh God, there's just nothing left in my head to plan anything. And that's definitely one of my main struggles with ADHD, is managing when and how I'm eating. So just making some tweaks now to support myself in that, so I don't just end up eating things on toast for 3 meals of a day. Still a good thing to fall back on, but I don't think my gut biome will be particularly happy with me having beans on toast every single day. So getting a little bit of variety in and having my meals delivered has been so helpful, because it's just one of those decisions that gets taken away. I don't need to decide what I'm going to eat. And decision fatigue is exhausting. And the society that we live in, in this modern world, we are constantly being pulled to make decisions. So if there's anything that you can kind of take those decisions away, can free up some headspace for prioritising what's important to you. Maybe that's your recovery. Maybe that is managing your ADHD better. Maybe it's running a business. Whatever it is to you that's important, what decisions can you take out right now? And also asking for support. If you live with someone who loves cooking, can you kind of lean on them a little bit to do the food? Can you bulk cook? There are other options that aren't just reliant on a £100 a week food subscription. I've also been prioritising my nutrition. So alongside getting these meals delivered, if you're watching on YouTube, have a look. I've got one of these sensors on at the moment, a blood glucose sensor, because I have just felt things have been a little bit off. Probably the last few months before we decided to do this project, so probably sort of springtime, I've just felt not as good as I could be. And I don't necessarily think that's because I've stepped back in any way. I think it's more I'm aware of where I could improve. And I'm just like making tweaks now, because thank God I am healthy now. I can go and do the things I want to do. I'm just aware I'm 33. I want to be looking after myself and setting habits in place now. So when I do get older, I'm aging well, I'm looking after myself, I'm not deficient in anything. And I would much rather address it preemptively than after the fact when I'm struggling. So nutrition's been one of those things. And also I've been vegan for 6 years, and I don't think I've had a blood test in all of that time to actually check if I'm deficient in anything. And had a blood test, and everything apart from vitamin D has come back perfect. And even that, I'm still in the healthy range, but just slightly on the low side. So that's just what I'm hearing is I need to go on holiday more often. I need to get the sun. But there's a ridiculously high percentage of people, I think, in the Northern Hemisphere that, like most of us, are deficient in vitamin D, because we all sit indoors and don't get enough sun, especially if you're in England. So that's been the only thing that's actually flagged up. So it's quite nice to see those results and see that everything is pretty healthy. And despite the amount of things on toast that I have been eating beforehand, and I love what my partner will call a school dinner, which is something beige out of the freezer, which would normally be like vegan dinosaurs or vegan nuggets, chips, and like baked beans. That's like a go-to easy meal. Well, I used to eat quite a lot of them when I'm just exhausted from doing too much work and have no brain space left. Yeah, despite eating beige food, my triglycerides were actually healthy, on the low side, which is in keeping with a low-fat diet. So I was quite proud about that. So I've been using this blood glucose monitor for about 6 weeks now, and it is really cool. It's called Lingo, and it's on a trial at the moment with a nutritionist I know, who's also going to be on my retreat in November. So for anyone who's in the UK or would like to travel, I have a somatic day retreat on the 9th of November coming up. So Jenny, the nutritionist, will be there talking about what we can do to help our bodies with nutrition when we have chronic illnesses or neurodiversity. And she's also been really helpful with like the low barrier snacks and things for me, because I've seen program guides before. I can cook, but it goes between things on toast or a 3-course gourmet meal. There's like nothing in between. So she's been really helpful to just say, like, why don't you have an apple with some tahini? Because you're getting your protein in them with the tahini and some healthy fats and your omegas, and you're also getting, all the good stuff from an apple. So working with her has been really helpful, and seeing when my blood glucose or blood sugar levels are spiking has been fascinating to see. So one thing I have been, again, we're making tweaks with some of this stuff. So one of the things that I've noticed is, before I was aware of this, I would have a chai latte in the morning. So it would be oat milk with a little bit of sweetener of some kind, honey or maple syrup or sugar, and tea bag. So I'd have my chai latte in the morning. Now I can see what's going on. That would cause me to have quite a big spike. Not an unhealthy one, but it would spike my blood sugar quite a lot. So what I have been doing now is having a normal cup of tea. So for the Americans listening, I'll be that Brit talking about how to make a cup of tea. So I'm having a normal tea bag with hot water and a little bit of oat milk instead of it being mostly milk. And that's not spiking my blood sugar as much. And I still get, because I love in the morning to wake up and have a cup of tea in bed and spend probably an hour or so just in bed, not doing much, just waking up slowly. Not a morning person. So making those little tweaks, and it will also say if your blood sugar is spiking. So one thing I didn't know is, when you've had a meal, doing a little bit of light exercise. So one of the things it recommends is either doing like a 7-minute walk or 20 squats, just to get some of that, the glucose. I'm not a nutritionist here, but it's something to do with it breaks down in the body better if you can exercise straight after you've eaten. And I don't think that means doing anything big, but it's just doing a little bit of movement. And that's actually helped me feel better. Also, stress is another thing that spikes your blood sugar. So, like, I had a really hot bath on one evening and my blood sugar went really high and then really low and then really high and then really low again. And for any of you that have POTS or like orthostatic intolerance or anything like that, I don't know about you, but I used to find if I'd have a bath that's too hot, I'd get out and I'd feel really shaky, really weak. And I know when I was at my sickest, if my blood sugar dropped, I would feel the same. I couldn't walk, and I'd suddenly have this like crash come on where I'd be shaking, I just couldn't move, I'd feel quite teary, I couldn't make any decisions. It's horrible. And I'm linking, not that I go there anymore, but I felt sort of like that sometimes if I have too hot a bath, just really kind of like faint and not right. So didn't realise it's the stress on my body of having a very hot bath, even though it's relaxing, it's also stressful to the body, would spike my blood sugar. So it's just like just becoming aware of all these little things and then being able to make little tweaks on like what I'm eating and when I'm eating it and when I'm exercising. So being able to see that on a graph has been really helpful. And how fantastic these meal plans have been. I spent a week in Devon a couple of weeks ago, and this was the weekend that we had our first guests in for the Airbnb. So basically that last couple of days was just get the house ready, chuck everything in the annex that we don't need, pack some kind of overnight bag and shove it in the car. So I ended up going down to Devon for a week with just whatever I'd kind of thrown in the car. There wasn't much planned. Food, not planned at all. I was like, there's a Tesco nearby, that will do. I'll go shopping. I'll figure it out. So that was a bit of an up and downy week. But looking at my blood sugar levels and everything, they were actually okay. I think it was the one day when I had cereal for breakfast, I noticed having that, I then feel hungry quite quickly afterwards, and then I just end up snacking all day because I haven't had that proper filling breakfast. And I've noticed having protein for breakfast has been really helpful. So I've never really been one for having protein for breakfast, but one of my go-tos now is a good rye and spelt sourdough, a couple of slices of that, and I slice it all up. I buy a big fancy loaf from Tesco, slice it all up, put it in the freezer. So I've always got fresh bread. I take out, stick in the toaster, and then have some scrambled tofu with a bit of ketchup and maybe some tomatoes cut up, maybe some vegan bacon if I fancy it, so baked beans. So I've always got like a nice healthy and quick breakfast to have, which has been really supportive because it keeps me full for longer then. So getting my food, nutrition, movement in has been I don't think I could have got through this if I hadn't prioritised those things. I've been talking about accepting help and asking for help as well. So thankfully I have a team that supports me in my business. I have a virtual assistant and I have a social media manager, and I have been quite heavily reliant on them over the last few months and really just taking stuff off my plate that isn't an absolute priority for me. So me recording this podcast is one of my priorities because I'm the only one that can record this podcast. Someone else can edit it, but I'm the only one that can say what's going on in my head and share the stuff that you guys want to hear about. So this is one of my priorities, alongside other things that only I can do. So any of the other stuff, and bless them, they've been working overtime for the last couple of months because we've got a launch coming up as well. I have been asking and getting support because this is not where my energy is best used with a lot of the things that other people can be doing. And I know that can seem pretty big. And if you are a business owner and you are struggling with something like ME or chronic fatigue or fibro or ADHD, you can get support if you're in the UK from Access to Work to pay for this kind of support, because I don't think I'd be able to run my business without them. And that is something that Access to Work support me with. So I now feel like a proper business owner because I'm able to focus my energy and my attention on the things that are most supportive to you guys, the stuff that helps you, rather than just being in a constant flap, coming up with new ideas and it not resonating with anybody. So really focusing on where I've spent my time has been really supportive. So they've been someone that I've been reliant on for the last few months. I'm also, you might believe it or not, quite an extroverted person. I think I'm technically an extroverted introvert. So being quite extroverted, I get quite a lot of my energy from going and seeing friends and socialising to a certain degree. If I spend too much time with certain people, I do get tired or just I've had enough. But generally, it energises me. So that's something else I've been doing over the last few months is on the weekends, that's my time. So I've been going out and seeing friends. I've been just having a break from everything, whereas my other half has been kind of working non-stop. My weekend, that's my rest time. I don't mind doing stuff in the evenings, but getting out and seeing my friends, going up to Bristol, going for walks around parks, going out for dinner, just those sorts of things has been really helpful. And it just tops me up. It's just gives me some energy going and seeing my people and kind of talking to them about what's going on in my life, hearing about what's going on in theirs as well. And then it's just taking you out of that, this thing needs to get done. Because yes, we've had this big project going on, but that's a period of time in my life. It's not going to be that way forever. So I don't have to drop everything. But I have also had to shift quite a lot of things that have been going on in my diary. So certain podcast episodes I've had to move around a little bit just because I've been trying to find the time to put myself first. But I think we're on schedule. We should be all good, hopefully. And another huge thing is regulating myself, staying regulated. And I have noticed, I think it was in August, beginning of August, that month of my PMS was horrific. A week of just feeling like shit, basically. And it was and I knew it was hormones playing with me because I track my cycles, and this is something I talk about in my Heal Good membership as well, is where we are in our cycles and how that affects us at different times of the month because of our hormone levels. And this was one of those, like, my estrogen had dropped and I was just feeling just like I'm not good enough. I was really teary. I was just like, snapping at everything, just fed up. And that seemed to go on for ages. But regulating myself through that and just noticing, well, this isn't my reality. It is and it isn't. This thing is happening, but I've also got the awareness behind that this thing is happening. That I am not angry, but there is anger present in me at the moment. What can I do with that? So again, finding some tips and tools to regulate, taking myself away when I am snappy, and giving myself permission to spend a few days sitting on the sofa and eating rubbish and watching rubbish on the telly, and that's okay because it's for a day or two. If I did that every day, maybe not so much, but just giving myself permission to be okay, not being okay, regulating that was a pretty tough time. And also sharing how I was feeling. That wasn't one of those internal, oh, I'm the only one that feels like this. You know, I have a lot of female friends, those that struggle with PMDD and endometriosis. If I can talk to anyone about struggles with periods and hormones, I've got friends I could talk to about that. Thankfully, they get it. It's not something to just be sort of fobbed off as women's problems. Because for a lot of us, we feel this stuff. And going back to the priorities, I wonder what comes up for you when I mention that, because it can be easy to say, oh, you know, you need to prioritise certain things, especially if you're an ADHDer, because executive functioning, planning, organising, figuring out what those priorities are can be difficult. So there's actually an exercise that I do as part of the Heal Good membership, and I go back to this myself every few months. Actually, there's two exercises. One is a values exercise, and this is where you go through what's really important to you in your life, and it's this wonderful exercise of taking you to a few moments in your life and pulling out some of the values from those, and then figuring out what is it that's actually important to you. And I have this as the background on my phone. So I've worked out the things I spend my money on and the things I spend my time on generally have to be in one of these categories. And they are love, adventure, fun and laughter, connection, and nature. So those are my values, and those are the things that I like to prioritise my life around, build my life around those things, because they are important to me. Now, other people will find different things. So this is a great exercise to go through. And this is one that's in my Heal Good membership. I'm sure you can go online and look up a values exercise, or just see what comes to you as I'm talking. Like, what are your values? What's important to you? And then from that, there's another exercise that is called the Jar of Life, which isn't one of mine, but this was from, I think, a professor. He walked into his class and he had a glass jar, and he also had some rocks, some pebbles, and some sand. And he poured the sand into this jar, first of all, and then he poured the pebbles into the jar, and then he asked the class, is there any space for the rocks now? No, because the sand and the pebbles have filled up the jar. Now, what these represent the rocks are the things that are important to you. So some of those things that are of value to you, it might be family, it might be those things that I have just mentioned. The pebbles are the things that are important as well, but they can kind of be fitted in around the other stuff. So like if you've got kids, for example, work's important, kids are important. Do you plan your kids around your work schedule, or do you plan your work schedule around your kids? You probably put the kids first and say, well, they need picking up at a certain time, so I'll work till then and I'll work after then, or whatever it might be. So that is you saying, well, my kids are the rock and work is the pebble. You can fit that in around it. And then the sand is just all the other stuff that needs doing. That might be replying to emails, putting the washing on, emptying the dishwasher, just, life stuff. But often if we put that sand in first and we get stuck in the menial day-to-day grind of stuff, we then don't have the space for the rocks and the stuff that is really important to us. So this can be a wonderful exercise to go through, working out what are your rocks, what are your pebbles, what is your sand, and then rejigging your schedule to making sure that you put those rocks first. And it doesn't generally mean you need to kind of uproot your entire life, but it can mean making a few tweaks and maybe setting some boundaries. I'm only going to work until this time. And if I don't, this is what you can do to hold me accountable. So that is something that I do every few months. I'm actually moving into a new office next month, so I will be going through that in the next fortnight to rework out my schedule and make sure that I have time to move, to look after my body, to see my friends, because often it can kind of creep up on you. All these little things, they creep up on you. So probably once a quarter, this is an exercise that I will do myself to just check in with, am I still practicing what I preach? So that could be a helpful little tool there to have a look at yourself, especially if you're feeling really stressed out and like there's not enough time and there's so much to do. What are things you can take off your plate? And if possible, delegate them. Another thing that has really helped, and I'm quite proud of myself for, was having a break before I needed it. Often what I've done in the past is I've pushed and pushed and pushed, and I've worked and worked and worked, and then I start to get a sore throat, or I wake up ill, or my body tells me in some way that you need to slow down and stop. So when we had the first guests in, which was the August bank holiday weekend, our annex wasn't ready yet. We didn't have a bathroom, so we could sleep in there, but and cook. But that's all well and good, but you're not going to last very long in there if you don't have a working toilet. So we had to find somewhere to stay. So luckily, Nate's parents put us up for the Friday night. And then my mum had said that their caravan down in Devon was free. And I thought, okay, we'll stay there for the weekend and then we'll come home. But she'd actually booked me in for the week. So it was an absolutely beautiful week, like really nice English summer. It was warm most of the time. So that was one of those things that actually this was the universe again delivering. Go and have a break. So I had that break before I needed it. I worked a little bit, but like maybe an hour a day. Went out on walks. One of my friends came down. Nath came down for the weekend. And it was just such a nice chill out week. I was sitting on the beach, went out for dinner. Just a lovely week to just chill out. So I'm proud of myself there for taking that rest before my body came along and kind of poked at me that I needed one. And I had that break. I've come back. I've got my launch happening this week and I'm feeling good. That was needed. I've not had any more symptoms or my body's not shouting at me. And I'm just feeling like I've got the right energy to bring to this now. So by the time this episode comes out, you would have heard my workshop. So I'd love to hear some feedback if you came along. And hopefully there'll be a lot more of you in Heal Good, my monthly membership. So there will be another cohort of that opening in a few months' time. So if you did miss out this time, keep an eye out on my socials and things, and I will tell you the next time the doors open for that. But this has been an experience, and this is just always learning. Some of you might be, looking at me and saying, "Oh, you've recovered, you're traveling, you're doing this, you're doing that." I don't think there is one point that you get to where you're like, "I'm done." I'm at a point that, I'm complete. With recovery, there's always more you can be doing to improve and make tweaks, and it's not coming from a place of not being good enough, but coming from a place of how can I improve my life even more? How can I keep expanding and keep growing? And I think that's pretty limitless. So I hope this episode has been helpful. If you have been going through anything stressful, let me know if there's any tips that you have heard in this episode that are something that you're going to take away with you. Drop me a message on Instagram, or don't forget to leave a review and a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this. Really appreciate them. Helps me get up the charts and get this out to more people that need to hear this. So thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Calm Your Nervous System. I hope you found the conversation as interesting as I did. If you would like to start healing your nervous system, I have a free energy diary available just for podcast listeners, which will really help you see your blind spots about how you're spending your time and your energy. Find it at jennyadamscoach.co.uk/podcast. Find out more about me and somatic coaching in the show notes below. See you next time.